At 6, as a British warship prepares to sail to Cyprus to protect the RAF base there, Donald Trump criticises Sir Keir Starmer and the UK response to the war with Iran.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Donald Trump says he is shocked by how uncooperative he believes the UK is being.
6 months ago, President Trump was on a second state visit here to the UK. So much was invested in nurturing the relationship with him. And now he publicly belittles the Prime Minister and mocks him.
The destroyer HMS Dragon will sail from Portsmouth to RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus, along with helicopters and anti-drone technology. Multiple Israeli rockets have targeted the presidential compound in Tehran. Millions of people are still trapped in the region. Some of the 300,000 Brits stranded have begun to return home.
Israel attacks Tehran and Beirut as the conflict across the Middle East escalates. Iran's capital sees a new wave of strikes, including the airport. The Red Crescent there say almost 800 people have been killed since the US and Israel attacked Iran on Saturday. Meanwhile, Iran continues to retaliate as explosions are heard across the Middle East. Oil and gas prices continue to surge and stock markets slump following attacks on energy infrastructure across the region.
Markets across the world are in turmoil as gas and oil prices continue to spiral because of the conflict. And against this backdrop, the Chancellor delivers her spring statement with figures suggesting a slower growing economy this year than expected.
Hello to you from Tel Aviv on day 4 of America and Israel's war with Iran. In the last hour, Britain has confirmed it's sending a warship, HMS Dragon, to the Mediterranean to increase security around RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus, which has been targeted by Iranian drones. But just now, Donald Trump has given his sharpest criticism yet of Sir Keir Starmer, saying this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with. And he went on to sharply criticise the UK's response to the war. In a moment, Jeremy Bowen will bring us the latest on the Middle East conflict. But first, live to Sarah Smith at the White House on President Trump's outburst.
Yeah, Clive, this is clearly a new low in transatlantic relations, with the president being extremely critical of the United Kingdom and directly of Sir Keir Starmer, saying he is shocked by how uncooperative the UK is being over his war in Iran and that it's changed the special relationship between the UK and the US. Welcoming the German Chancellor to the White House, President Trump praised Germany's support for his war on Iran, while criticising countries he said were being unhelpful.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
The island Donald Trump is talking about is Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands, where there's a joint US-UK airbase. The president's unhappy about British plans to hand sovereignty to Mauritius and lease back the island. The relationship between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer has never been more strained. The president says he is shocked by how uncooperative he believes the UK is being. The reasons President Trump gives for starting the war keep changing. Today he claimed Iran was about to strike against the US.
Based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand.
His Secretary of State offered a different explanation yesterday when he said the US knew Israel was planning to attack Iran and that Iran would retaliate by threatening US targets, so it was necessary to strike first.
We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage.
Lawmakers in Congress will be briefed later today by senior officials about the conflict and will have many questions about the administration's ever-evolving rationale for starting this war and about how it may end. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
Well, Chris Mason is live at Westminster for us now. One can only imagine, Chris, what Sir Keir Starmer feels deep down about these comments. Has there been any response so far?
Well, Downing Street Clive are resisting the temptation to dash in front of the cameras. That has always been their strategy when there has been flare-ups from President Trump, an attempt to try and calm things down. Folk that I speak to in government are emphasising what Keir Starmer said yesterday, with that emphasis on what he sees as the British national interest. There's a reference to where British public opinion appears to be. A poll yesterday suggesting that there is a significant proportion of people in the country who do not support the actions of President Trump in the Gulf. But let's be absolutely clear, this is the stickiest moment yet in the relationship between the Prime Minister and the President. As I say, so much has been invested by Downing Street, by Keir Starmer, into having a functioning relationship with a very different president by any historical comparison, but also a very different personality and politician from Keir Starmer, the former human rights lawyer and the real estate magnate and reality TV star. It was always going to be an awkward political relationship. There's been flashpoints before, including in the last couple of months over remarks the President made about British troops in Afghanistan. But this particular decision from Keir Starmer has really irked the President, that is clear, because the Prime Minister said no. He said no to using the runways in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, and also to the one at the RAF base in Gloucestershire. So it had a direct impact on the operational decisions the White House and the US military were making. Now, the President is conflating two things. The whole question about the future of the base in Diego Garcia and the particular decision the Prime Minister took on authorising the use of that runway. But nonetheless, the anger is real and the patch-up job quite significant, one suspects, from Downing Street's perspective. Quite the moment.
Chris, thank you for that. Chris Mason, our political editor, live at Westminster. Well, back here in the Middle East, there has been no let-up in the fighting, with more airstrikes and military action around the region. Israel continues to hit targets across Iran, including the leadership compound and other government buildings in the capital. To the south of Tehran, satellite images show damage at a nuclear site in Natanz. Israel is now fighting on two fronts, with more strikes on Beirut and an order for ground forces already patrolling a buffer zone just inside the border with Lebanon to extend their presence as a guard against strikes by the Iranian-backed group Hezbollah, which has launched missiles across the frontier. Iran itself has also been targeting Israel once again, including here in Tel Aviv, as we've heard explosions just behind us overhead, and the air raid sirens went off just before we came on air. Those explosions were the result of drones and missiles being intercepted. There have been other Iranian strikes across the Gulf too, including in Riyadh, where the US Embassy was hit by 2 drones, and in Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates, where smoke could be seen billowing from an oil facility. Well, Jeremy Bowen, our international editor, has more on day 4 of the war.
HMS Dragon is one of the Royal Navy's most advanced warships, a Type 45 destroyer. When it gets to Cyprus, it won't just improve the air defence of the island as well as the British base. It also acknowledges that the war has spread, and like it or not, the UK is being pulled in towards it. In Minab in southern Iran, these are new graves, ready for the funeral of 165 people the Iranians say were killed in an attack on a girls' school on Saturday. The funeral brought the city to a standstill. Many of the dead were pupils from the school, child-sized coffins, photos of schoolgirls and grieving families. After the raid happened, the Americans said they never targeted civilians. They have yet to explain why so many children and adults were killed at the school. And in Tehran, more attacks. Iran's air defenses were mostly destroyed last year by Israel. The Americans and the Israelis have advanced a range of reasons, some contradictory, to justify why they're attacking Iran, killing civilians as well as members of the regime, and what they hope to achieve. In the last 24 hours, there has been less talk of regime change. The clearest explanation seems to be that they saw a chance to inflict serious damage on a bitter enemy. That alone is not a legal reason to go to war. Some Iranians are leaving, small numbers at this crossing into Turkey, but the war is a gamble. The US and Israel say it will open the way to peace and stability. If instead it provokes disorder and bloodshed, there will be a new refugee crisis in the Middle East and beyond.
I'm coming from Tehran, and there is a lot of chaos in the city, a lot of missiles and attacks from US and Israel. I'm not into the politics, but I know it's a lot of, it brings just a lot of sadness to people.
We hear some collisions outside of the city, but not inside of the city, sleeping in fear and waking up in stress. So the situation is a little bit awful.
Iran continues to attack its Arab neighbors. This was Bahrain, and this was the airport in Dubai. Iran cannot match the firepower it's facing, so it's trying to disrupt American and Israeli plans by spreading the war. They even hit Oman, usually their trusted intermediary with the West.
When the United States attacks us, whether by fighter jets or the ships it deploys, they have access to our territory to strike with all kinds of missiles and aircraft. We cannot reach their territory, but we can reach their bases. I think those bases are legitimate targets.
Lebanon is becoming an increasingly intense theatre of this war. Overnight, Iran's ally, Hezbollah, hit back at Israel. And during the day, Israel has launched a series of air attacks on the southern suburbs of Beirut, a stronghold of Hezbollah. Israel has made a series of threats, not for the first time, to finish off Hezbollah once and for all. Lebanon and its long-suffering citizens have been dragged into another war that most people in their battered country do not want. Further south, close to the border with Israel, Tyre is under heavy fire. Israel has already told citizens in dozens of villages near the city in southern Lebanon to get out of their homes, a sign they have plans for a big military push. In Israel, the Prime Minister and the military top brass visited troops at an air base, filmed by the Israeli military who blurred their faces, and Mr. Netanyahu issued another warning.
Our pilots are over the skies of Iran and Tehran, as well as over the skies of Lebanon. Hezbollah made a very grave mistake when it attacked us.
The IDF has mobilized reservists and is moving forces up to the border. In 4 days, the war has spread to Gulf Arab countries and now to Lebanon. War moves fast in the Middle East because it's the world's most turbulent region and now even more dangerous. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News.
The latest on the active front lines there. Well, the Navy warship HMS Dragon will soon be on its way to Cyprus. What do we know about its capabilities? Here's Jonathan Beale.
HMS Dragon today being readied in Portsmouth, one of the Royal Navy's most advanced air defence destroyers. The Prime Minister has said it'll soon be on its way to the Mediterranean to help defend the island of Cyprus from Iranian drones and missiles. The Royal Navy's Type 45 destroyers already have experience of similar missions. In 2024, her sister ship, HMS Diamond, helped defend international shipping in the Red Sea from Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. The BBC was the only media on board for that mission.
293 and 165 knots to work.
We witnessed the moment when an Iranian-supplied Houthi ballistic missile was launched.
Air warning, red, air threat warning, red. Missile inbound to the ship.
On this occasion, it was well out of range. But Diamond did successfully shoot down a ballistic missile, as well as a number of Iranian-supplied drones, and had the marks to prove it. RAF Akrotiri on Cyprus has already been targeted by Iranian drones, one landing on the runway. Security's been stepped up with additional jets, but more is on its way, including helicopters with air-to-air missiles, as well as HMS Dragon. But given tensions have been rising for months, there'll be questions as to why this didn't happen sooner. Jonathan Beale, BBC News.
Well, HMS Dragon's primary aim will be to protect military personnel based in Cyprus. And we're hearing that in the last 24 hours, RAF F-35 jets flying over Jordan have shot down an Iranian drone. Jess Parker is outside RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus for us now. Jess, a measure of reassurance for the folks on the base.
Yes, and as I speak to you, Clive, jets have been flying noisily over our heads here. We are just outside the RAF Akrotiri base, the base that was struck by a drone on Sunday night. The damage, we're told, was minimal, but the repercussions have been significant. First of all, in terms of Cyprus, it is a country that is keen to stress it has no wider involvement in the wider conflict, and as well that it doesn't believe it was the target in the case of this drone attack. But it's clearly feeling exposed, so it's asked for help from other European nations, among them Greece, which is sending fighter jets, it's sending frigates. And now, of course, we've heard that the United Kingdom is going to send a warship and helicopters with counter-drone capabilities. Now, it has not been confirmed where the drone that struck this British base came from. The Cypriot government say there are indications that the Iranian-backed Hezbollah group in Lebanon was behind the launch. The British are keen to stress that British bases it has here in Cyprus are not being used by US bombers. But clearly this base has been targeted. Now military assets are being rushed here. And I think both Cyprus, an EU country, and the United Kingdom really want to avoid drone incursions and any casualties that could risk drawing it further into an escalating conflict.
Jess, thank you for that. Jess Parker there outside RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. Well, Iranians trying to flee the bombing from Israel and America have been crossing into Turkey to escape what's going on. James Waterhouse is on the Turkish border with Iran in the town of Kapikoy. James, what are people telling you there?
Well, it's interesting, Clive. I mean, this is a very difficult route for people to take. It is a cold here that just sticks to you. We're at around 3,200 metres altitude, and the picture is more nuanced than simply being an Iranian who is pro-regime or pro the method of attack by Israel and the US. We met one woman who was hopeful that there would indeed be a regime change. She said she had never seen the leadership so weak, and she was hopeful that other international allies would come to Iran's aid. We met a man who moved back to Iran in the new year to take part in those demonstrations where thousands were reportedly killed by masked members of the security forces. He said, yes, we want change. We know the risks of demonstrating against it. And he said it was a difficult question to answer about what future Iran had. But he also questioned the merits of launching airstrikes in this way from both Israel and the US. We've also seen Iranians go the other way, right, going back into Iran, because they were concerned for family members, and they see it as hypocritical for the White House to be criticising Tehran in this way. So it's a mixed picture, but with the border now very much open, we wonder whether more will make this journey.
Yeah, indeed. James, thank you. James Waterhouse there on the Turkish border with Iran. Well, more than 100,000 British nationals have been stranded as travel from the Gulf region remains heavily disrupted. A few flights have reached the UK from Dubai and Abu Dhabi today, but airspace in Qatar remains closed. The Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says the government is planning to send a charter flight to Oman to evacuate vulnerable travellers. Coletta Smith has that story.
Just 12 hours ago, Zoe and her fellow passengers didn't dare to hope that this would happen.
We can't believe it. We actually got on the flight. Yes. And we're going to be home in a matter of minutes.
But they've made it. Touchdown at Manchester Airport this lunchtime. And it was relief for those on both sides of the airport barrier.
Honestly, I cannot tell you how quiet that flight was until we passed Israel.
Yeah.
Like,
was it? Did it feel like people were holding their breath?
Yeah.
That is our crew walking.
Oh, they were all
brilliant.
Super scared.
They were all brilliant. Hats off to you guys. Hats off to you guys looking after us.
We've driven up from Bicester to get them.
It has been the most surreal, strangest thing, I think.
We've seen missiles from our window, literally. We used to be in the lobby holding our hands. We were that scared, weren't we? We're home. We're home.
But for many on this flight, it's not the end of the journey yet.
Manchester to Paris, Paris to Barcelona.
Oh gosh, okay, you've got a lot of flights to do.
We are out of the war zone.
I can't describe the feeling. Hugging the captain when we landed and stuff. It was just mad. I can't believe we're here, to be honest. We got lucky.
But the vast majority of holidaymakers are still stuck, including Jocelyn, who was just passing through Doha en route back from Australia.
The government really has to step up to get us out here, because I can't see how this airspace is suddenly going to open up with the position of Qatar airport being on a peninsula, which is very exposed.
Do you feel in danger at the moment?
Oh my goodness, yes.
For those who have got home, emotions are bubbling up.
It was actually a really successful work trip up until Saturday, where it just all went a bit wrong, but it's definitely cemented our friendship beyond work now.
We didn't know what was going to happen. We're the first plane to leave. We're the first
These
plane.
are our new best friends for life.
The hope here is that more people make it home safe tomorrow. Coletta Smith, BBC News at Manchester Airport.
That's it from us here in Tel Aviv. For now, I'll be back at 10. But now, it's back to you, Rita, in the studio.
Clive, thank you very much. Well, the impact of the conflict is set to be felt here in the UK, with global energy prices soaring and stock markets tumbling. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, acknowledged the uncertainty as she delivered an update on her plans for the UK economy in her spring statement. Growth is forecast to be down this year, but Ms Reeves said her plan is more necessary than ever. Well, let's get more detail from Faisal Islam, who's here with me now. Faisal.
Thank you, Rita. It was never going to be a budget, but the very numbers announced today at the spring statement were released in the shadow of that profound economic uncertainty from events abroad, with tumbling stock markets and, as the Chancellor stood up, another day of spiralling gas prices, which at one point were up 50% again, doubling in 2 days to £1.70 a therm. Biggest rise since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's about halfway up to those levels that caused havoc with bills, but fell back a bit later in the day. This, for reference, is the forecast published today, assuming in the coming year just 71 pence, so way out. Events abroad loom large, says the author of the forecast.
This is all an increase in costs to the UK. It is a hit to the standard of living in the UK. It's not fiscally in any way helpful, partly because you've then got some welfare benefits that are uprated in line with inflation. So it costs the government, it doesn't generate any more revenue. It's pretty much bad whichever way you look at it.
The Chancellor highlighted the decrease in the amount she would have to borrow in the coming years to fund public services, helped by lower interest rates on our debts and surging stock markets. Until this week, of course. Government borrowing falls to 2% of the size of the economy over the next few years. Has been much higher than this, 5 or 10% since the pandemic. It's actually lower than the average of the G7 economies from this year for the first time in more than 2 decades. Now, on the all-important growth in the economy, a mixed bag. The last forecast is here in the darker bars, today's forecast in the light green. This year, a downgrade after a disappointing end to last year, but growth slightly higher in the subsequent years. With lower migration, per person growth has improved a bit. But this is basically flat and led to claim and counterclaim in the comments.
Stability in our public finances, interest rates and inflation falling, living standards rising, more children lifted out of poverty, more appointments in our NHS, more investment in our infrastructure, a growing economy and more money in the pockets of working people.
She speaks of stability. What planet is the Right Honourable Lady on? She has lurched from putting up taxes to destroying growth, to destroying headroom, to coming back to putting up more taxes, more growth destroyed. Round and round we go.
The challenges of high debts, unrealistic assumptions about public spending and highs in the tax take remain. And today's figures ask the same question about how to jumpstart relatively sluggish growth. We're promised a new plan from the Chancellor later this month, but a possible but not definite energy shock risks pushing inflation, borrowing and growth in the wrong direction at the same time. Rita.
Faisal, thank you very much. Well, let's take stock of what's going on in the Middle East with Jeremy Bowen, our international editor, but first with our business editor, Simon Jack. And Simon, we've just seen UK gas prices shooting up. When can we expect to feel that?
The thing about energy prices is they're incredibly pervasive. They get into all sorts of things. The price of gas up 76% in the last 2 days. That can have a direct knock-on effect on the price of electricity. Now, a lot of people will be protected by the energy price cap until July. But after that, if this persists, it's likely that those bills will go up. We've seen oil prices up 17% in the last 2 days. Petrol is already going up 2 pence. We've seen that. The RAC reported that today. Rough guide, every $10 it goes up, you see about 4 or 5 pence extra on the forecourt. And that makes its way into transport costs. Gas is used in fertiliser, so you see food prices going up. So like I say, very pervasive. I should say that heating oil in Northern Ireland, very popular way of heating a home in Northern Ireland, already seeing a £100 increase there. So as I say, is it inflationary? Of course it is. How inflationary is it going to be depends entirely on how long this process lasts. But it does make it look like the interest rate cut that many people were expecting in the next week or two, a little bit less likely.
So that's potentially what's coming down the road for us. Jeremy, looking at the Middle East, this has escalated at such speed, hasn't it? President Trump, the US, was in talks with Iran just last week. Now there are attacks on all these fronts.
Yeah, it's like a forest fire. 4 days, the Arab Gulf countries, Lebanon, things are really escalating there. A lot of pressure continuing on Iran, and they're trying to hit back as well. So it's a sign of the turbulence in the region that war spreads so quickly, but it's also a sign of potential dangers ahead because it was already a fragile and chaotic place. And a criticism being made by a lot of analysts and people, and not least in the United States, about Donald Trump's plans on this is that they are not thought through correctly. Of course, and also talk of dubious legality, and that has been reflected as well in the things that Keir Starmer has been saying over here. And because if they're not thought through, then there's an issue about where's it going, how long will it take, and one of the reasons why previous American presidents haven't gone along with Mr. Netanyahu of Israel's desire to go to war with Iran, and Trump has this time, is previously they've been concerned about the knock-on effects in this very delicate region and the things that might happen that cannot be controlled. But Trump doesn't seem to be too worried about all of that, and he's pretty confident that it's all going to be fine and it's going to end fine and dandy with a big victory. Well, he may be right, but there are lots of reasons why he could actually be wrong.
Jeremy, as always, thank you very much, and to you too, Simon.